Hi, everybody. It is August 17, 2019. The very many ways, the methods that they have to shuffle people around, get people out of neighborhoods. Wow. I saw this earlier, and it reminded me of a video that I wanted to post before my computer died, which was, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to get to it right now. There are so many methods that they have to impoverish areas, to shuffle people around, to move them out of communities, to impoverish those communities, and then create communities where, well, very little affordable housing exists, which then increases homelessness. It is amazing what is happening in our country every single day. So I do try to bring as big a picture as I can so that people really understand that we've got a lot of our fellow Americans really suffering. And I'm thinking about one subscriber in particular, which I will post a video on a little later. A subscriber who's going homeless. Listen, guys, this is all very personal for me. It's personal for me because my life was destroyed. When I started on YouTube 8 years ago, I can't remember a subscriber who was really suffering the consequences of the economy, housing, all of the agendas that are taking place to transform the United States into this third world nation, and to reshape it the way the powers that be want it reshaped, transformed. Doesn't matter who's sitting in the White House. All of these agendas continue to go on. They have actually accelerated. These agendas have taken a speed that is really pretty, hard to grasp on a daily basis, everything that is taking place now in our country. So it doesn't matter if it's Trump or anybody else. It doesn't matter what they say. They speak a good game to just speak what you want to hear. But then you got to dig into the details to find out what is going on. And if you're not digging into the details, then you might think, hey, America is being made great again. It's not. It really is not. All right. The reporting or the videos that I post, I don't want to call it reporting because I'm not a reporter, but the videos that I've posted on all of the weather events that have taken place, and I posted a video on these dams in Texas that were, collapsing, but kind of looks like an explosion, which you will see in this video. It had a big detrimental effect on the people who live on these lakes in Texas. This is is it the Guadalupe or Guadalupe River Authority? Well, they have made a decision to drain the lakes, which will only further impoverish this community that their local economy is dependent on those lakes.
We just are disappointed that the folks that we've been working with have jumped the gun on this and we're as surprised as anyone else.
Mark Long with the Friends of Lake McQueeney says GBRA blindsided lakegoers and residents with the news of the dewatering plan.
The most disconcerting thing is, as we've said before, the lack of notice and public forum and discussion to explore other ways to mitigate the risks that are posed.
The water is still flowing behind me here at Lake McQueeney for now. That won't be the case in mid-September when GBRA starts the dewatering process.
We've just seen there's a very real risk to potential future spillgate failures if we do not lower the lakes.
GBRA says another spillgate failure like the ones at Lakewood and Dunlap is imminent, and the agency doesn't want to gamble with the risk to public safety.
The event that happened at Dunlap, I think, is a very real example of what's going to happen.
And that was the event that I'm talking about. And this looks like it was something else was going on. And do understand, please, extremely low frequencies that we are seeing being set off blasting away throughout our country, but certainly blasting away during all of those weather events, which, you know, they're still ongoing, not on the scale that they were for months on end. Every single day, areas were being flooded out. The amount of farms that have been flooded out, the acreage, oh, well, yeah. Rising prices, food shortages on their way. But I see pretty much everything that is taking place now in our country as ways to destroy communities, to bring about this reshaping of our country. So if you don't know about Agenda 2030, if you don't know about Agenda 2050, I hope that you, well, just put in Agenda 2030 in the search bar on YouTube. Yes, there are still a whole lot of videos that will explain the reshaping of not just the United States, but the entire world. The reshaping of the United States into mega regions like the Texas Triangle, the Arizona Sun Corridor, Southern California, Northern California, Front Range, Cascadia, and Gulf Coast, Piedmont Atlantic, Florida, Northeast Great Lakes. And that is it. All of the gray area, no people. No people. People will be in the colored areas. They will be smart cities. Internet of Things, where you will be living in a way that, well, you won't have cars. You will have public transportation. You will have, your green spaces. You know, those parks for your enjoyment. You will live in stack and packs, these very small apartments. Shopping will be within walking distance. Your method of transportation will only be bicycles or your legs. Everything will have sensors. You will be surveilled 24/7. And if you do anything wrong, then you will in real time be flagged, and either a drone or a robotic police will suddenly be at your side. That's why they are rolling out 5G. 5G, military. It's the military band. Millimeter wave. They use the millimeter wave for perimeter fencing to keep people out or in of certain areas. because if you cross that frequency, you will be burned really badly. They also use it for surveillance. So, you've got these 5G cells being put up in the smart cities all over. You're in your home, you're walking down the street, you're at work. 5G millimeter wave will be on you. And with that millimeter wave, they can, in real time, surveil you, what you have on your person, what you have in your briefcase, in your pocketbook, in your shopping bags, in your suitcase, whatever you're carrying. It's like an X-ray. They literally can see everything that you're carrying, everything that you're doing. This is where we are headed, and we're heading there very fast. So, Texas, this area is is it Sequin, Texas, which is, this is San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth area, Waco. I think this is the Woodlands area, and this is Sequin is like in between, I think, Austin and San Antonio. So they destroy neighborhoods to bring in the smart city, the redevelopment for the smart city. They also reduce the population that way. So the depopulation is in fact happening because they do not want a whole lot of people in these mega regions. It's easier to keep track of a smaller population than it is a very large population. So when you think about all of what is taking place, the geoengineering, the dumping, the spraying of toxic chemicals that are making, and heavy metals, are making people very sick, the weather modification that is literally disseminating areas of our country. Then you have your city councils, your town councils, making decisions that you don't really know too much about. They're doing it behind the scenes, behind the curtains. You're suddenly facing where you live. The de-watering of a lake impoverishes people when they're relying on the lake for their local economy. So when you put all of these methods together and you get a glimpse of what's happening in our country on a daily basis, you get to see how many people are being taken down. You know, I posted that video yesterday on here, the morphing of the American dream, right? And showing that so many people are having their homes taken away. Why? Well, they have long grass. The grass is taller than 7 inches. Or they haven't paid $6.30 in property taxes that they didn't even know about. And suddenly, their house is foreclosed upon and sold by the city council. This is happening, you know, while so many of us show you, you know, just examples. Think about how many people are getting affected by all of these ordinances, like the ordinance in Illinois. In this video I showed an ordinance where they were literally kicking a family out of their home in Illinois because a teenager had committed a crime. And in Illinois, they have these ordinances where the police can show up and demand that the landlord evict tenants who did not commit any crime whatsoever. Innocent people getting thrown out of their homes. What happens when you get an eviction? Very hard to get a landlord to rent to you. If you can't buy a home, then you're living in your car. Homelessness is exploding, not just in California, all over our country. So I apologize for the interruption, but man, I so wish I could see people in their communities taking action against these city councils and town councils making these decisions. You know, that a whole community comes together. But it's just not happening. You know, that's the only way that we can fight all of this. And it's just not happening anywhere. It's very frustrating because what then is the consequence of people just sitting and watching all of this take place? More and more people are getting destroyed. So why am I rather passionate about this? And why is it personal? Because I know so many people now. My subscribers, 8 years ago, didn't know anyone. Didn't know anybody who was sensitive to the frequencies. Didn't know anybody who was suddenly going homeless. Didn't know anybody who, had lost their job and was really struggling, though not a lot of people really like to talk about that. But in the 8 years, I can't tell you how many subscribers I have now who really need help. So we've got to figure out a way to help one another. So let me go back to this. I'm sorry for going on.
If one spillgate was to occur, we just got very lucky that, given the time of day that happened, that there wasn't anybody downstream of the dam that was at risk.
The agency says safety warnings posted on and around the dams have been ignored.
Disregarding the safety zones that we've put up, that we've expanded, and at this point, because we can no longer guarantee safety of the public, we have reached this difficult decision.
And you know what? That's bullshit. The safety of the public. Oh, we are protecting you. We're protecting you. The dams may fail again. Are you kidding me? And did you hear? Where is the blame placed? On those people who weren't following the rules and the regulations. They were ignoring all of those safety rules. So now we're just going to, make your lake dry.
Long says without Lake McQueenie, that area is losing a large piece of their economy.
What other things could we do to mitigate those risks, to avoid this economic disaster that is now going to be created by this agency and our state government?
Stacey Riker, Spectrum News.
Okay. So, what's another way in which they are shuffling people around, getting rid of people, and making a whole lot of people homeless? And then, they're the marginalized. You hear, what have we been hearing for certainly a decade? 500,000 homeless in this country. Somehow that figure never changes. We have far more homeless in our country, and more are being made homeless every single day. And they just die off.
So people are being pushed out of low-income neighborhoods because now those neighborhoods are becoming high-income neighborhoods.
Rent has affected me in various ways, honestly, from just my day-to-day life. 4 families have moved out from my street on 73rd Street and West 14th Avenue since November.
they forced us out of that property. And they didn't take all of it, they just took enough.
Areas that would receive loans for purchase of housing would be rated according to their risk. And the areas that were the most risky were color-coded red on maps. So that's where the notion of redlining comes from.
Long years ago, we were not allowed past 36th Street. When you got past 36th Street, you were in high society. Not only 36th Street, there was a lot of places that we could not go as colored people. We could go on the beach. You had to have if you worked on the beach, you had to have a green card and a health card. Now, right on 62nd Street, off 12th Avenue, they had what was called the wall. And you cannot be caught on the other side of the wall when dark came. You had to be on. They tore it down, but still a little part there left to let you know that that wall was still there.
You know, I included that because the gentrification that has been taking place in our country for decades. I remember when I lived on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, when I first moved in, it was such an incredible neighborhood. It was so great. Mom and pop stores, antique stores, bodegas. It was a neighborhood. And then gentrification came in fast. Suddenly, it lost all its character. And a whole lot of people were moved out of that area because they could no longer afford to live there. You know, and I used to say decades ago, I feel like gentrification is following me. I don't like it. I love character. I don't like, these gentrified neighborhoods because they're just cold and, it's, they're getting rid also, when they gentrify, they're getting rid of a lot of areas that are so historic, and the buildings, the monuments, the statues, which tell a story. Well, they don't want that story told anymore because they don't want anyone to know history. It's kind of like they just want these rootless people who have no connection to anything. That's part of the reshaping, of our countries. But I moved to Park Slope, Brooklyn. It was such a great neighborhood. Then suddenly after I moved, it just got gentrified. I moved to Northampton, Massachusetts to go to school, and it was so cool. It was like a real down-to-earth, neighborhood, New England, small town New England. I loved it. And in those neighborhoods, nobody was looking flashy, and you didn't see an awful lot of women wearing like the fur coats and keeping up with fashion, and people were just down to earth. And then it was gentrified, and then suddenly it lost a lot of its character. So this is taking place all over our country. But it is, I've gotten accused of being a white apologist. I've been accused of, I probably will be accused of being one of those who apologizes for being born white. None of that is true in me. But yes, every country that has a majority of a particular race, that majority rules. And yes, we did have institutionalized racism. We were privileged. Now, this PC privilege bullshit, is Well, that's part of the agenda, right? And you all understand that. But, just because that PC has become so loud, it does not negate the fact that whites were privileged simply because of the color of their skin. I had opportunities decades ago that black women didn't have. That is a fact, and we can't deny that fact. We also can't deny the fact that things have gotten so much better while we're being presented, with this story from mainstream media that nothing has changed and white supremacy somehow just, got reignited in this country once Trump took office, and all of that we know is, it's so loud now that and people are buying it, and especially the young, because they don't know our history and they don't have a reference point, and they don't see, the changes that we know have occurred. We know have occurred. They don't see it. So they're out there, they're on that social justice bandwagon, being manipulated. We've had a lot of poor white people in our country. They too affected by this gentrification. That too is a fact. So the gentrification, I've noticed that an awful lot of certainly the mainstream media, but NPR, they now present gentrification as if gentrification is only taking place in black neighborhoods. That is not true. It's also dislocating an awful lot of white people. That you do not hear. We need the truth demands the full truth, not half the truth. But it is true that decades ago, black people were segregated in their own neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods were gentrified with an awful lot of white people coming in who were of the middle class and upper middle class. All of that is true. It's hard. The truth really is incredibly demanding because it requires an awful lot of information to be kept in the forefront of your mind as we're watching all of these events take place. Here we go.
In addition to the fact that it's just really unaffordable, there is gentrification, and the people that are moving in are of a much higher income than the ones who were living there before. And so now, as a result, the prices of everything in those neighborhoods is going up. And a big kind of a poster child for gentrification in Miami is Wynwood, but it's also well underway in the West Grove and in Overtown. We're starting to see the effects of it in places like Little Haiti and Liberty City as well.
It shouldn't be allowed because of certain, creatives or whatever term you want to put on the people that are moving here. It should not be the case that we who are trying to make a difference cannot afford the rent here. Just because, whatever types of populations are trying to live the Miami lifestyle or they like what Miami is. Like, the people who are born and raised here we have a state, and we should be able to designate what's happening with our neighborhood.
It's an economic structural problem. There's nowhere people can move to now, anywhere in South Florida, where they're going to be able to afford the rent if they're only making minimum wage or if they're only living on Social Security. And if they are finding those places, it's not going to be a good quality place.
Okay, let's see. This is Atlanta.
Across the country, Atlanta, one of the top cities for gentrification. That's according to our partners at the Atlanta Business Chronicle. One of the three things that you need to know. Atlanta had the fourth largest share of gentrifying neighborhoods behind Washington, D.C., Portland, and Seattle. This report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia comes less than a month after the announcement of a $1 billion plan to produce 20,000 affordable housing units across Atlanta over the next 7 years.
But you know what? Those affordable housing units, they promise them a whole lot don't manifest. This too, this is an area, this is South Carolina.
Is pricey. While older neighborhoods are getting revitalized, people who've called those neighborhoods home for generations are being pushed out. And helping those people and thousands of others will cost Greenville County about $8.5 million a year for the next 20 years to address the housing challenges.
Digging up Greenville's future. But every new house comes with a hidden cost.
He come by like a thief in the night.
Miss Alice Geary is a 72-year-old breast cancer patient. And until last year, this was her home for 25 years.
I got a little bills in 30 days.
A developer has spent the last year flipping hers and 3 of her neighbors' homes.
This is the first time I come back because I wanted to. Nothing I do that. I want to come back and look.
What stands is something she barely recognizes.
Terrible. And they about to get me alive.
What happened on Leach Street is just a snapshot of what's happening in many Greenville neighborhoods.
Greenville has become a place to be. Realtors and homeowners are flipping their houses and allowing people who can pay more money to come in and pay more money.
Some neighbors don't even, which isn't good news for people who rent, like Gary and Akeisha Mays, whose family has lived in the Sterling community for generations.
We like fishing the pond or in the lake. When are they going to throw that rod in and catch us, and take me out of my home or tell me that, hey, you got to leave, or your rent is going to be so much. You be a home and here.
Mays works a full-time job at a major upstate employer and wants to own a home.
About 10 of them.
But at the end of her street, townhomes are going in that will cost around $700,000.
Come on. That's ridiculous. I mean, nobody can afford that. Not
Nobody can afford it, except for those who are quite well off. Greenville, South Carolina, a 5G smart city. Gentrified, and a whole lot of people have been dislocated, and it does cause people to become homeless because they have nowhere to go. They have no options. This is happening in New Orleans.
Tandra Smith has been living in her Fairgrounds neighborhood home since 2008.
A lot of my neighbors have been here longer than I have.
She likes the area, mainly for its affordability. But after seeing her recent property assessment skyrocket, she's fearful she won't be able to live there much longer.
This right here, of course, this is from last year, 2019. They had it at 167, which was, reasonable, because I purchased it actually at 135. Now it's at 416.
$116,000.
Yes.
Wow. What was your initial reaction when you saw that number?
I wanted to cry.
It's a problem many people say they're noticing. Smith and dozens of others expressed their concerns at a community meeting tonight.
Any conversation about affordable housing has to include affordable homeownership. And that conversation has to include existing homeowners.
So any sales that have occurred in the last 4-year period.
Errol Williams, Orleans Parish Assessor, attended the meeting to help clarify any concerns. Many people came to the front to ask questions.
Is that correct? Is that taking into effect the rollback?
While others showed their frustration.
We applied the formulas equitably among everybody.
Williams says if someone has an assessment increase that they feel is wrong, to bring it to them. We asked Williams about Smith's large assessment estimate.
Is that extreme to you?
No, it isn't, and here's why. Because over the past 4 years, there has been substantial increases in values in each respective neighborhood.
A lot of people feel that they're being pushed out of their homes this way. What do you feel about that?
Well, gentrification is happening all over the city, not just New Orleans, it's all over the country.
And that's true. Okay. Does that man sound like he cares about all of the people that are being pushed out? You know, and it's also very interesting that I've gotten a lot of comments underneath my videos. White people are the evil race. Really? Okay. You don't think black people are also part of the problem? Then we have the people who believe that Americans are good people and they have nothing to do, and they're the ones who are pushing their fellow Americans out of their homes. How is it that people cannot see what is very clear? Our fellow Americans are absolutely right there with all of these agendas because they're getting a salary. They get to live like this guy is not all that affected by what he is implementing. The property values in 1 year goes up so much, people can't afford the taxes. What happens? They have to move on, get out.
Errol Williams Parish Assessor, attended the meeting to help clarify any concerns. Many people came to the front to ask questions.
Sorry.
Smith's large assessment estimate. Is that extreme to you?
No, it isn't, and here's why. Because over the past 4 years, there's been substantial increases in values in these respective neighborhoods.
A lot of people feel that they're being pushed out of their homes this way. What do you feel about that?
Well, gentrification is happening all over the city, not just New Orleans, it's all over the country. And what you're seeing is that people are buying in neighborhoods, renovating properties, and selling for substantial more. The same house that you may be living in may be identical to one that's sold next door to you, so we can't ignore that. I can't treat them separately. But people who have struggled, it's a tough situation.
Now, the assessor did tell me that if you do feel that you have something that does seem kind of inaccurate, to please call them. They may be able to adjust your estimate depending on if there's issues surrounding your area or your actual property. Reporting.
Okay. Well, this is what happened to New Orleans. You know, create a crisis, Katrina, and then that crisis allows a solution, which is gentrification.
What did it look like when you were growing up? Because this is brand new.
Nothing like this. This is Disneyland compared to how we grew up.
We're here in New Orleans, and it's been 10 years since Hurricane Katrina, one of the biggest natural disasters in U.S. history, not to mention a massive political failure. And today, some places like here in the lower Ninth Ward still look like this. But other places in New Orleans look a whole lot different lately. This is bigwig developer Prez Kavakov. He has a $1 billion vision to turn his hometown into an Afro-Caribbean Paris. You're like an urban voodoo doctor. You're reviving part by part. Now, who are you hoping to attract to condos and places like these downtown, new, luxury?
We've got lots of people like you that are coming to town, 30,000 of them. It took many years to make people comfortable, but now this urban revitalization, not only in New Orleans, but all over the country, is becoming a movement.
Now, are you actually seeing New Orleans natives moving into places like these?
Absolutely.
But that's not what we've heard. We visited one of Kavakov's mixed-income properties with Kevin. Kevin grew up in housing projects here before the city tore them down after Katrina. In fact, only a fraction of public housing residents were able to move into the new mixed-income developments like this one. So you don't see the jobs coming along with the development?
No, especially in not the jobs that are paying, because most of the jobs that are part of development are not going to residents. They're going to people that are coming in from out of town.
How does it make you feel that it took Katrina to then get this, to get pressure washed? Brick.
It makes you feel awful. It makes you feel like you weren't worth the investment.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you weren't. People who have very little are regarded as worthless in our country. I'm not saying that everyone feels that way or thinks that way, but most do, because money is the only thing that we value here in the good old US of A. Money, money, money. We speak a good game about how moral we are and the values and, oh, but who lives it? Who lives it? So that guy said 30,000 are coming into New Orleans. How does he know 30,000 are coming in? Because that is part of the agenda. You're getting an awful lot of people. Let's say all of these people who are moving out of California, going into Arizona, going into Texas, and a lot of people going into Louisiana areas, New Orleans. New Orleans. You know, what other city has a character that you have people from all over the world that want to go there because of that character, because of the culture? It's so rich, you know, the music, everything, the food. They're destroying it all. They're destroying it all and getting rid of New Orleans people who have, you know, lived there forever, and bringing in new people, because new people don't really care. They don't have really an investment in the area. They don't really get involved in the politics, you know, what's happening in local government, in the town councils. People who have been there for their lifetime, for their, you know, lived there for their entire lives, they have an investment. So get rid of them. Because the people who have lived there forever will fight. Well, one would hope, right? One would hope. This is New Orleans.
Later, that's money is coming down. But again, we say that this is a cowardice. This is happening in the middle of the night when people can't come out and celebrate this great victory for the people of New Orleans.
I think it's terrible. It's criminal. It's an insult. It's an egregious attack on history. This is the history of our area. You can't change it by pulling down monuments. It's our history.
And you do notice that here, what is this? NBC News. A white man talks about his disapproval of removing these statutes, and a black man who's saying that they're really happy that they're getting rid of these statutes, but unhappy that they're doing it at night. Why were they doing it at night? Because mainstream media is not presenting the truth. There's an awful lot of black people who have been trying to fight the removal of these Confederate monuments because the history of the Civil War, well, what do we know? Oh, it was the North fighting the South, and the South that wanted to hold on to slavery, and the Northerners, well, they were the good guys that wanted to free the slaves. That's essentially, you know, the sum up of the Civil War, and it's not true. That war started on the federal government dictating to the southern states how much cotton they could sell, who they could sell it to, the taxes that were levied on the southern states. So it was a war that started on the tyranny of the federal government at that time, dictating to states. There's so much more involved, you know, and there were a lot of black men who fought in that Civil War, and they fought, you know, for the Confederacy. And I've posted videos on, I think I have some on Never Lose Truth, or if they were on Kafka Winston World, they're gone. So we're not presented the truth. So get rid of statues, monuments, that tell the story of the history of our country. Good or bad, it is the history. Why remove history? Teaching the truth. That's what we need to do. Teach the truth of our history, which is not pretty. New Orleans, Microsoft, City Next. That's what they're bringing about. This, well, smart city, Internet of Things.
New Orleans, Louisiana, home to Mardi Gras, jazz music, and Creole cuisine. Is also home to nearly 370,000 people and host to millions of visitors annually. Ensuring those people can call 911 for emergency assistance in times of need is our job.
It's our job. Okay. That's how they present it. Internet of Things, smart cities, sensors all over. First responders will be able to protect you better. That's it. They don't talk about the surveillance. They don't talk about the tyrannical control that they will have over people in these smart cities. But this is happening all over Greenville, South Carolina, New Orleans, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, all of the cities in these mega regions that are right here, you know, and it's still going on. So whether Trump is in office or not doesn't matter.
Kirkwood has become one of the places to live in Atlanta. The neighborhood has really transformed over the years, but higher property values are kicking those with deep roots in the community out. Patricia Hutchinson will be 79 years old next Friday. She's lived in her home on Rockyford Road in Kirkwood for the last 50 years.
When I first moved here, everything was so much different. You know, we didn't have all these large houses and everything.
While Hutchinson says she enjoys her new, wealthier neighbors, they have caused her property taxes to skyrocket.
It is more than triple in the last 4 or 5 years.
We checked. The value of her house has increased 132% since 2005. Her City of Atlanta taxes have increased by 319% since 2011. She's not the only one in Kirkwood feeling the pinch of gentrification.
They're basing the property value, you know, on these other houses.
This woman, who does not want to be identified, has lived in her Rockford house since the 60s. The value of the house has increased by 131% since 2005.
This house was appraised, I believe, at $293, and there's no way it's worth $293.
If she doesn't come up with the $2,200 she owes in taxes by the end of the month, she'll be kicked out.
She said she gets $700 a month for disability. That's $8,400 a year, and her taxes are $2,200.
Justin Schaefer is a Newark resident who is leading a charge to help long-term homeowners. He's raising money for this woman so she can stay in the house she grew up in.
Certainly there's a sense of responsibility and guilt for those who are helping to gentrify the neighborhood and driving prices up, which is driving taxes up.
Okay, I will link below to all of these videos, but it's really important for people to understand that this is taking place all over the country, and it is destroying people.
Penn Stadium is a beautiful, shiny.
And this audio problem with YouTube is driving me nuts.
beacon to sports. It's also the reason that Super Bowl 53 is hosted here in Atlanta. However, the $1.6 billion stadium casts a shadow over the surrounding historically black neighborhoods. English Ave, Fine City. Atlanta's first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King, and other influential black leaders called these neighborhoods home. This was once a thriving think tank for Atlanta's black community. But due to development and other factors, these neighborhoods are losing their identity.
As I have said all along, this is the mother. You kill the mother, what's going to happen to the children? What's going to happen to the other communities? I have been crying, let's save the mother of the West Side.
The Glossy Stadium has triggered a wave of new development and gentrification through the surrounding communities, causing rents to rise significantly and property taxes to skyrocket.
Immediately when the stadium opened, it was just like everything just went skyrocketed. Houses in the community that have tripled, that were appraised for maybe 150, they're now 300,000, 400,000.
The new stadium in and of itself, I would say, bears no benefit to the community.
Two historic churches, Friendship Baptist and Mount Vernon Baptist, were acquired and demolished to make room for the stadium.
We don't want to become a community reduced to blacks. I mean, the building tells a story, but if the buildings are no longer there, which says to me that there is an effort to destroy the history and the culture in this community, and by any means necessary.
Arthur Blank, billionaire, owner of the Atlanta Falcons and Mercedes-Benz Stadium, started a philanthropic program in his foundation called West Side on the Rise to help revitalize the communities around Mercedes-Benz Stadium and slow the effects of gentrification.
One of the things we're committed to and recognize is that you can't just have a bunch of outsiders come in to help folks and do it to them or for them as opposed to with them. And so how do we bring outside resources, expertise, which you need, but also invest in the groups and individuals who are here and help them play a meaningful role in the change as well.
Contrary to the Blank Foundation's mission, longtime residents on the West Side do not feel organizations like theirs have been successful. They don't feel heard, much less a part of the process.
It's almost like a give and take. You give us something, you take something away. Okay, so but in order for us to have that investment, we had to close down our elementary school, which is named after Mary McLeod Bethune, but you take away our historic institution that didn't need to be closed.
The market just moves a lot faster than, say, philanthropy can or the public sector can. And so we're trying to move with as much urgency as we can to try to make sure we lock in for permanent affordability as much land as possible, because the market is going to swoop in. This just got redone. This is affordable housing through the West Side Future Fund. So we're starting to see more of these kind of projects. So it's small. A lot of what you see within the neighborhood is single family and small multifamily. So that's affordable housing for the community.
With the Super Bowl looming, West Side residents are not feeling the excitement that comes along with hosting the big game. They have bigger problems on their minds.
I'm not excited about that at all, to be perfectly honest. The conditions of our people, the people who are in our community, who would not be able to afford a ticket on the roof, let alone inside the building.
So, you have what you just saw there. They manipulate the community members into believing that you guys have a voice, talk to us, but you're ignored. And they do whatever the hell they want to do. So, they bring in either the weather crisis, Katrina, and then suddenly New Orleans is going through a gentrification, or they bring in a stadium and then suddenly the whole community gets gentrified after that takes place, and the city council, the local and state governments are giving them so many subsidies to do exactly what you see. So it's very inexpensive for these developers to develop a stadium, and then suddenly all of the people around that stadium, they're moved on. It's all deliberate. And this guy talking about the market, we have not had a free market ever. It was freer decades ago, but now everything is controlled. Everything. So this guy talking about how, well, the market is just moving so fast. It's deliberately moving fast. Flint, Michigan, the water crisis. This was the water. What happened after the water crisis? Gentrification. New Orleans. Homelessness is skyrocketing.
Progress. The newly homeless population in New Orleans is on the rise. Intense gentrification following the devastation of Hurricane Katrina has caused rent and housing to skyrocket in many neighborhoods. More people are seeking shelter, sleeping in cars or abandoned houses.
The market down here is $800 to $900 to $1,000 for a one-bedroom house or a two-bedroom house. But some unfortunate single parent can't afford $800.
Despite working 2 jobs, Roy on Burbank still doesn't make enough to afford housing for herself and toddler.
I called Child Protection Services on myself because I didn't want myself to get in trouble or even lose my kid. So I had to call them, tell them, well, hey, you know, I have a situation, I'm in an abandoned house. I called and I took the chances to get myself on my feet because I have a beautiful son. I can't let him down.
According to Housing NOLA, the agency that tracks New Orleans housing trends, rent prices have gone up by 102% and housing values by 109% between the year 2000 and 2013.
Yeah, this video, by the way, played the audio you could hear. Now, it's some of the audio is just gone. YouTube has really become just a platform that is creating so many problems.
Very distressing to us to see the tide turning in the wrong direction. We're seeing, you know, families sleeping in their cars. We're seeing families sleeping outside in parks.
The lack of affordable housing taking a toll on the city's most vulnerable, the disabled, elderly, and low-income wage earners, affecting many children. This father and son have been living on the street and in a friend's storage room about the size of a large closet. They became homeless after Norman Carter was unable to work following a...
You could hear the audio at one point, but now this man had a brain injury from a car accident. He's taking care of his grandson, and he became homeless.
Bicycle accident last summer.
Past 7 months without housing. It's unbelievable. I mean, to walk and ask people for money so that you can eat, or to buy medicine for your kid, Pampers.
Advocates say more funds are needed to offset the high rent and home prices. The majority of Unity's funding comes from the federal government. For now, Burbank's son is staying with his grandfather while Unity works to get him and his mom a place she can afford. And
well, the audio's gone.
I'm Mrs. J.L. Root. I was born in Watoga, West Virginia. Real small town. I was not heard of here. Way back in 1934. I moved here in 42, so I was 8 years old when I moved here. I went to Maggie Walker High School. I graduated in 1950. I moved from Venable Street to here in 1958. I paid $6,000 for this house. Airman Avenue has always been a real busy thoroughfare. They used to have at that church, which is Bethlehem Baptist. They had a daycare. And my two grandsons went there. For daycare until they were school age. And it used to be at 6 o'clock in the morning. You could hear the doors slamming because the workers were coming to work and they were warming up the bands for the kids. And sometimes now I think about that and it's just so much different. It's really quiet. The restaurant on the corner. And the place across the street from that used to be a service station. But the rest of those houses starting at Mosby and coming to the east
They were once all occupied by blacks. Now they're almost all white, the entire area. Nothing's changed really except the people, and the improvements or renovations that have been made to the property. You don't see much tearing down. Most of the time they're building up. And I don't guess it's a week that goes by that I don't get 2 or 3 cards in the mail saying we want to buy your house. So they're looking because everybody wants to live in Churchill all of a sudden. I have no idea who lives in that house. Never seen them. So neighbors are not neighbors in the sense of the word as when I first moved here. We were neighbors. You know what I'm saying? We knew each other. Our children went to school together. They grew up together. That's what I call neighbors. But now, other than this man right here, I don't consider myself having any neighbors. That's how things change over the years.
And things they've changed for the worse, which means that everybody has to, start kind of bringing back community, bringing back family, bringing back neighborhoods. Boy, what is going on? What is going on? And there was, I just lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. Oh yes, I wanted to mention, did you see, that black and white, film from, the 50s and the 60s? And the black communities, black families, very strong, and very Christian, taking care of their own, the integrity, the dignity of that community. What has happened? The policies enacted have destroyed so much of the black community. Now, yes, magnificent change has occurred. And there are an awful lot of people who are, within that black community. They have risen. They have, in terms of their class, becoming middle class and upper middle class and quite wealthy, in positions of power, all of that kind of stuff. But there's a underclass, and this is true for whites as it is true for blacks, but it's the policies that were enacted. So when I hear all of this judgment, about that percentage of our population, I get very upset because an awful lot of people are not looking at all of the external factors that have had a huge impact. Those who now it's generational, that they're just living on welfare. Well, you got white families that are welfare generations, which hardly gets any play on mainstream media. But it is absolutely true. The policies enacted by the Democrats, who love black people and just want to help all these black people, and they've destroyed an awful lot of the our fellow black Americans. This idea that if you work hard, you can make it here in America. That has always been bullshit. It's if you know, in a perfect world, if the game was fair, if you leveled, you know, everybody having the exact same experiences, the exact same, you know, upbringing, everything the same, then that would be true. But nothing is the same. Nothing. I don't understand why people can't see that there are so many factors that contribute to either picking someone up or holding them down. And yes, one factor is the individual taking responsibility. But even the individuals taking responsibility, they can get so crushed by the external powers taking place. Well, Boston, Roxbury, gentrification, I will link below accelerated gentrification in Roxbury, and areas in Ohio.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. A lot is changing in the Avondale neighborhood, and not everyone is on the same page.
The Avondale Town Center development will be complete in just a few months, and construction along the Innovation Corridor is now underway.
In our continuing series, Move Up Cincinnati, which looks at transportation and regional development across the tri-state, Lisa Smith speaks with residents who have mixed opinions about the neighborhood's future.
Around there's a building boom. A lot is changing.
Every community goes through certain changes. Avondale happens to be at a point where development is really taking off.
Tony Moore has lived in Avondale more than 40 years and owns the Avondale Food Mart. His Reading Road business is between two major developments, Avondale Town Center to the north and the Innovation Corridor to the south.
Our concern is we want to make sure that we're part of the change.
The strongest things that I feel that we have been able to do is to be involved in the planning of what goes on in this neighborhood.
Patricia Milton has been president of the Avondale Community Council for over 10 years.
There's nothing different in Avondale. We want the same things. A place where people can live, work, play, pray, invest, do business.
Both Reading Road developments include residential components. Avondale Town Center will have 119 apartment units, mostly market rate.
Currently, Avondale has about 12,000 residents, and about 71% are renters. Some say that creates a vulnerability.
The imbalance is part of, you know, what makes the community vulnerable.
To grow the community, we have to bring in different income points, housing income levels into the community to balance out what is already here.
But some residents are concerned.
We moved from the West End in 1960. I lived on Bar Street.
David Thomas has been displaced before. With new and future Avondale development, he's already seen rents going up.
I wanted to rent the second floor, and she said $1,200 a month. I'm like, huh?
The community is already studying housing trends for the neighborhood.
Gentrification is happening all over the urban core, and we have always said we don't want anyone who lives in Avondale to be displaced.
Lisa Smith, 9 on your side.
But you know what? We don't want anybody to be displaced, but people are being displaced. What you are seeing here are, this is the Agenda 2030 plans taking place all over our country, in the mega regions, the stack and packs. You'll have your green areas, but there will, it's just going to be like public transportation eventually. No one driving cars. You'll be walking. You've got your apartments, the mixed use dwellings, shopping below, living above in your stack and packs. You know, there are so many people who are getting hurt. So many people. who are suffering these consequences. And the suffering is something that those who have yet to experience, those who are still comfortable, you just don't know it. And it's not stopping. All of these agendas continue on. So this, Trump support, I find really, it's just heartbreaking to see so many people stuck in the matrix, believing that other people are going to fix the problem. Well, the only people that can fix the problem are you, me, and those in their community members, and getting rid of these people who are coming in, these developers coming into the community to develop Agenda 2030 for you. And these people who are implementing it, sorry, we don't want to displace any of our members, but that's the result. So that's the thinking of Americans. Oh, I'm a good person, and we're bringing, development, good development. Hey, it's going to be pretty, and not much is going to change. Bullshit. But the good people have to believe that they're implementing something that is good for the community members. And then, we're implementing it, and we're going to create affordable housing, but that doesn't happen. We don't want to displace any of our members. I'm a good person, but the displacement is taking place. And then what do people do? They blame those who are displaced on something lacking in them. They weren't thinking positively. They were lazy. There were so many jobs out there, but they just didn't want to work. They want to be collecting Social Security, disability. They want to be collecting welfare. That might be true for some, but it's not true for most. All links are below. Once again.